That's a winner, right?
Hi.
That's a winner. Hey.
Hi.
Hi,
Hello.
Emily.
Merry Christmas. Hi.
Merry Christmas. Wait, let me
Merry
get this on the
Christmas.
screen. Let me
Sorry,
introduce
I'm
you.
more like
Hang on. I made notes. Okay, guys, this is our first guest. It's Emily Louise Church. She
Hi.
has a YouTube channel called Weird Reads with Emily Louise, and she features hoaxes, cults, conspiracies, etc. And she's also a producer on the cult doc that everybody's talking about right now called
Wow.
Love Has Won, The Cult of Mother God on HBO. My favorite,
Indeed.
quite possibly. Well, besides that Natalia Grace one, I would say those two are like the most shocking docs of the year.
What's the Natalia Grace one?
Oh, you got to watch that. That one about that girl who got adopted by that couple, and she's supposedly a kid, but they think she's like a 30-year-old woman. It's like the real story of the orphan horror movies.
This is like vaguely familiar to me, but I'm not entirely sure. Sorry, I feel like I've come in like very cozy. I've got like my pillow.
Oh, I love the
I had
room.
to I had to like pull myself out of wearing my blanket hoodie. I was just like full on pajamaed up.
Oopsie.
I have my cozy cardigan on, my cozy deer
I
cardigan.
like it. It's very, very seasonal.
Thank you. I'm trying.
I like it a lot.
Watch that.
You guys all have like very cozy backgrounds. Very like
trust me, they
twinkly.
just came together in like the last hour.
She had to search out she couldn't find Christmas lights, so she had to use her Halloween lights.
Nice.
I did. They look like they're a little bit reddish, but they're indeed orange. These are Halloween lights because that's all I have.
I like them. They're cute.
Mother God, here's another one. Mother God was a great watch. It's
crazy.
I don't even know. How do you give people an elevator pitch of the show?
Oh God!
Have you watched it yet?
Oh God! How to do it without like
I
spoiling
know
it for anybody.
That's why I couldn't do on the podcast too, because I wanted to start it with how it started, and I'm like,
yeah, it's quite intense. It's not an easy watch, I don't think. It really kind of throws you in at the deep end.
Yup.
I don't know how I would pitch it. Just a very kind of a religious cult that's very indicative of like modern times, right? They're very much like a kind of like a late stage capitalist, celebrity obsessed, kind of amalgamation of everything that is. They kind of encapsulate all the bad parts of like new age spirituality into one mess, and went absolutely wild with it, with quite deadly consequences for the leader.
Also, like, they had like QAnon shit mixed in too. Like that, it had everything. It had everything.
Yeah, there's a lot. They were kind of a hodgepodge. They kind of took every kind of belief system and put it together and made it their own. In a way. Very strange. It's strange to talk about it because I haven't been able to talk about it since. Because always when you sign on to do like a documentary like that, you're under like NDAs and stuff. You can't say anything. So then like 2.5 years goes by, almost like 3 years. And now I'm like talking about it. And it's really weird. It's bizarre. And like all these people are watching it. It's just very, very, very strange. But it was, it's a very weird experience. Kind of took over my life for a long time.
I think it's weird that when you were just saying, because like the paranormal shows that I've worked on, it's crazy because when it does come out, people want to know like what it was like doing it. But for people who work on shows, like sometimes it's been years since you worked on it. So your memory is like, I don't know. It was kind of
exactly. And like research wise, I haven't I know so much about it. I kind of took over my life for such a long time. But it's like I'm almost like refreshing myself on it. Because I kind of took a break for like I worked on it pretty much full time up until the end of last year. Just doing like so a lot of the like archival stuff that you see in the documentary was kind of stuff that I was going through and finding and just like literally watching like I don't even want to know how many hours of their live streams, because this cult literally live streamed every day from 2018 up until 2021, and they would live stream twice a day. So they'd do one first thing in the morning for like 2 hours, and then in the evening for like, sometimes those evening ones would go on for like 6 hours. I mean, I was watching all of them.
No.
It's crazy, and all of them have been wiped, and I keep wondering like, what should I do with these, because I have like all of them saved, and they're like not available anywhere on the internet, and there's some crazy stuff. There's a lot of crazy stuff that did not make it into the documentary. I mean, if you thought the things that they were showing in the documentary were intense, like there's a lot more. So much
you
more.
can tell us anything that you want.
Oh, they're just crazy stuff. Like, I mean, I'm a big fan of the documentary. I think it did a good job, and I really like it. I think like aesthetically as a film, brilliant. There were things that were missed out, I think, that probably could have made its way in, but you know, it's just a directorial choice. A lot of the kind of, I'm not sure if like the full extent of the abuse came through enough. I mean, I'm so close to it that maybe I'm like a little bit biased, and I kind of know too much about it. But like, I don't know, like as you were watching it, how did it come across to you? Like, how were they? Like, what was your impression of them?
Okay, my takeaways. Firstly, I know a lot of people are like, oh, this true crime doc was too long. Oh, this cult doc was too long, or like it was 6 parts or whatever. Most of the time, the idea is it was too long. I've heard multiple people this time say I would watch 6 more fucking episodes.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, there was so much that could have been put in that I feel like you could have made it. Like, you could have got a whole season out of that, just with like all these crazy things that happen, all these weird little tangents and tidbits that didn't make it in.
And then the other takeaway that I took, which is a little bit of a spoiler, but I feel like I said it on the podcast, where like every time you're watching one of these cult docs, you're like, okay, and you're kind of judging every one of the fucking weird cult members the whole time. And you're like, all right, which one person's going to break out? Or the shittiest stuff in the cult happened to this one person. So of course, at the end, they'll have woken up, right? They'll have seen how abused they were the whole time. And this doc, literally not one fucking person ever woke up. You kept waiting for it, and it's like, nobody, y'all are still fully on board to now. That's crazy to me. It's one of the only docs that feel like no one ever fucking.
You're fine. You're there, Emily.
Yeah, you're there.
Okay, so my internet just dropped out for a second, but I feel like I still stayed here. Yeah, they are. Yeah, all of them still in it, which is kind of
blew my
disturbing and weird.
Did you have you read When Prophecy Fails? Have you read that book?
I've read a bit of it. That's Dorothy Martin, right? And that's when that she's kind of predicting the end of the world. And
it's the UFO cult. And every time the end of the world doesn't come, the group solidifies even stronger, and they bring in more members because they've so invested in it. They like to admit that they were wrong is so like personality crushing that they can't. So they just embed more and more. That's so interesting for me, like watching your doc, because like the new age components, and one of my big facets of my career is studying like UFO contactees of the 1950s and 60s. And so when you start hearing things like the Galactic Federation of Light and things like that, those are direct like corollaries to like the Intergalactic Council of Light Beings, which is 1955. Like it's all this higher ascended masters.
And and that's the thing that I feel like, I don't know, when I'm making stuff on YouTube, I'm a big kind of like history buff, right? So I love like weirdo history, and I want to know like, where did this whole thing start? I want to go right back to the beginning, like pinpoint the exact moment, who created this, because someone had to have made it up. And I feel like, obviously, like, again, this documentary wasn't supposed to be that. It's not kind of like a long form YouTube video essay, you know, where you're going to go into like the origins of everything. But there's so much, like, there's a big focus on, like, so Amy, the mother god, her, like, one of her big spiritual advisors that she said was obviously Robin Williams, but right next to him is Saint Germain, right? So from there you've got like a direct correlation back to like people like Guy and Edna Ballard, and you know, like UFO cults and stuff like that. So there's so much like intersection, and you see it a little bit. Like they did include a little bit in the documentary of like a lot of Amy's early internet history. She was very into like ascended master teachings, Saint Germain, his violet flame, all of that kind of stuff. That's what kind of really dragged her down the rabbit hole. And then obviously having some guy say to you that you're mother god and he's father god, you know, could have been quite alluring for her.
Yeah.
Was that White Eagle?
Me to say the name of the
Yeah.
documentary, right? That's what it's called.
Yeah, love has won the cult of mother god. That is the one. Yeah, so he's an interesting character. Again, like there's so much that that I could say, and I keep thinking like at some point I might just do a follow-up, but obviously I've got a little like so go back to the beginning. I kind of discovered this cult, or didn't discover them, but like kind of came across them end of 2020, beginning of 2021. And they got kind of a little bit of press during the pandemic because they'd gone to Hawaii and you know, declared that Amy was Pele, and the Hawaiians drove them off the island, which I think is amazing, which I think is great. Like just, you know, people coming together and doing that. So they had a little bit of press, and I was kind of just like not really, you know, like it was the pandemic, wasn't really doing anything, didn't have a job at that point, and just was kind of like wondering what I wanted to do. And I just kind of finished like a filmmaking course. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to make a YouTube video about this. I'm just going to go for it, make my own documentary, interviewed some people for it, put it out. As I was working on it, this was like Amy was still alive when I was working on it, like making my own YouTube video. Then she died, and I put it out like 3 days later. Had to like put an addendum to it, being like, you know, wrote this and did it all before she actually died. And then it was just weird timing, because then just got an email from the director who was like, I'd love to make a documentary about this, would love to have you on board as a like consultant, because, you know, like there's not that many people that know, that have kind of like brain rotted themselves, you know.
Watch all of their live streams.
Yeah, exactly. There's not many people that would like willingly torture themselves to the extent that I did. So yeah, but the one that I made kind of goes into a little bit, but there's so much that over the course of like, you know, 2 to 3 years working on stuff, and then also like researching again where a lot of this stuff kind of comes from, and finding out more about origins and influences, etc. I feel like I could make something that's a bit more I don't know, like going into like all these weird little tangents, all of these like little tidbits that you learn.
I think that's the difficulty, right? So like my lectures, I call them weird lectures, right? I have since 90 when I started doing them, because they have to be tangent lectures. There are so many branches to the tree.
Yeah.
You start off talking about like, you know, people will ask me a question about like the UAPs that are happening right now and stuff like that. And then before I know it, I'm talking about someone in 1901 channeling Jesus who lives on Mars. and like it's all interconnected. Or Robert E. Howard writing Call the Conqueror novels talking about reptilians in the hollow earth, and like how that's going to evolve into like a mainstream like crazy belief.
Yeah, it's great. There is so much intersection. It's like I always find that whenever you try and just focus on one thing, it's just impossible, because then you'll find like the one person will connect to another person, and then that person will have a whole bunch of weird connections in themselves that makes them interesting and worthy of being spoken about. There's just too much, way too much. I always find that
too, like you're the little like mini doc that you were talking about that you made. It's on your YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, so it's from like a couple of years ago, and I can't bring myself to watch it now. I hate the editing style. And like something that you made like 2-3 years ago, and you go back and look at it, and you're like, fucking hell, what was I doing? Like I can't edit properly. At that point, I was like editing it on a little crappy laptop. Didn't know how to edit at all. Didn't have a proper microphone. I filmed it on my phone, so it's like really bad quality.
I'm very glad that I'm old enough to that technology did not exist. Like I watch video footage of my band playing a show in like 1986.
Nice.
And I'm like, oh, I can't, why does this exist? And now, like,
You don't look old enough to be playing in a band in 1986.
oh yeah, I was 16. My first
Damn.
punk rock band back then.
Nice.
And one of the rich kids had one of those giant camcorders that had like it came with a VCR.
Right. I can imagine lugging that to a show.
So yeah, full of
That'd be
punk rock,
great.
drunk 16-year-olds.
Can I ask one more thing too? Like, okay, so for those that didn't watch the doc yet, the mother god and then everybody else, she held up this like collage of all the passed away celebrities and living celebrities that she like believed were secretly in her cult, and that she like
I'll be right back.
gained wisdom from and like consulted with. Was there a way that she like chose those people, or it was random?
Just people she liked. They're just people she liked, and she would basically say that they were on her etheric team, right?
Mhm.
So if you were lucky enough back in the day when Amy was still alive, apparently Amy would do these etheric surgeries on you. So that's how that was their main recruiting tactic. They had the live streams. They also had their Gaia's Whole Healing Essentials, where they would sell a lot of like wellness products and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But their number one thing would be the kind of process would be you'd find their live stream, you'd start talking to them, and they'd always tell you need to book a surgery with us, right? But obviously the surgery doesn't happen, they're not cutting you open and doing whatever. It's on your spiritual body, right, in the etheric realm. So Amy, whenever she was sleeping, she wasn't actually sleeping. She was in either etheric surgery or different meetings with people. And she would do it with all the dead celebrities who she would channel, and they'd be on her team. So there was like, I'm trying to remember, but I think it was like, I think Patrick Swayze was in charge of doing it on pets, because you could do like pet add-ons as well. Like get etheric surgeries for your pets. So it all makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah,
she's doing it with Saint Germain, Robin Williams, John Lennon's in there. John Lennon's in there. John Lennon is actually Ashtar, which is always good to know. Obviously.
Got to have an Ashtar.
Yeah, exactly. Donald Trump was her father when she was the Princess of Lemuria, I believe.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much.
I love all of it. I need so many more parts of it.
Yeah, and it's cool. And it's like the beliefs are so bizarre that they're almost like, I feel like to really understand them, you do have to kind of like know where they come from. If you know where they come from, you can kind of understand. You put it all together. You're like Lemuria, Germain, Ashtar, got it. I know what this is. But a lot of people don't know what that is, right? So it's like, to an outsider's perspective, I can imagine it can be quite like, what on earth are these people talking about? But then obviously, as these kind of, a lot of these, from the inception of a lot of these beliefs, there's been a lot of dark stuff intertwined with it, and nefarious characters. And so obviously Love Has Won are also incredibly racist, to a point where I don't feel like it was shown enough in the documentary, I will say. Like, I think that there should have been a lot more emphasis. And that's like, again, coming from somebody who worked on it, my name is on it, I like it, I think it's great. I just think that there could have been more of an emphasis on like a lot of the harm that this cult did, because there's a lot of it, and a lot of it is documented. They documented themselves, and there's a lot of people out there who've been like very hurt and lives destroyed by them. I don't want to get like super dark and miserable or whatever. It's Christmas, but yeah.
But it's one of those things, because again, I will do a lecture and mention someone, especially now because we have such access to so much more information. And I'll be talking about a contactee from a UFO contactee that people have been talking about since the 1950s.
Yeah.
And somewhere down the line, because of the way we get information now, and it's being stored and digitized, like all of a sudden I realize, oh, this person that I've been talking about was an enormous racist. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't be
It's-
talking about this person anymore.
Yeah.
Or their writings were all based in racist ideas or sexist ideas.
Yeah.
That recently happened to me. I talk about, there's a UFO contactee from the 1950s that I used to talk about all the time. He was my favorite. His name was Buck Nelson, and him and his dog
Right.
went to Mars and Venus.
Yeah.
And he saw like a 30-foot dog, and he took his dog with him. So I loved it because it was just crazy UFO stories. And then like a year ago in one of the archives that I was digging through, I found his first written pamphlet pre-UFO stuff, and it's called like White Man Awaken.
Oh God. Honestly, it's insane. It's literally crazy. Like especially in like, 40 in UFO circles, paranormal, like everything. The amount of Nazis that you will stumble across and like that kind of ideology is absolutely insane. Like I feel like I come across it way too often. And I feel like it kind of because I'm like a skeptic, right? Like I would say I'm a skeptic, but I don't like to use the term like debunker because I still have like a lot of like things that I want to believe in, even if I'm still skeptical. And I think that there's a way to like do skepticism without like being an asshole about it and like being like a real kind of killjoy. But like there's also, I feel like, what am I trying to say? A lot of in these kind of circles, I feel like there needs to be a little bit of like acknowledgement of these kind of nefarious characters, because it's like just call them out. Like it's really easy to just call out people that are like Nazis. It's quite easy.
Yeah, for sure.
And a lot of people kind of cover up stuff and withhold information, and it just gets all kind of weird and bizarre.
Yeah, no, I think it's super important to talk about the horribleness of certain people because again, like it also shows that we're learning, right?
Yeah,
and so you can
exactly.
and it adds more context to the situation and what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
So like right now I'm in the midst of doing, Jessica doesn't even know this, but I'm in the midst of doing this little fanzine about another contactee from the 50s, and almost no information exists on him. He was only around for like 3 years. But his story is wacky and wild, and it's awesome. And I keep crossing my fingers and being like, okay, when am I going to hit the speed bump that like this fanzine has to be like not done anymore? But so far, thankfully, it's just really whacked out. But again, intergalactic councils and beings of light. And so that you can start to see where he's getting information from, what he's been reading.
Yeah, exactly. And you do see that a lot. But again, like I find all of this kind of stuff like really interesting. I feel like I maybe gained a reputation from like some of the things that I do on YouTube and some of the more kind of provocative things that I might say on Twitter sometimes, of like being like a hardcore debunker or like, somebody that's like anti, but I'm really not. Like I again, like, look at the sticker behind me, the Bigfoot sticker that I want to believe post. I've got friggin' cattle being sucked up into a UFO. Like I really kind of like, I have a lot of love for these kind of topics, and I feel like I fell out of love with it for a very long time because of things like that. Like constantly stumbling across people with like some of the most heinous views. And I just got like so sick of it that I almost went like too hard on the skeptic debunker thing and started to like hate everything and be like, oh God, everybody sucks. I feel like now I've come more into the middle.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons, and Jess and I have talked about this many times, like I think one of the reasons that I've kind of, like me personally, that I've been able to persist in this kind of community for as long as I have is because, like, I tell people outright, like, I don't believe in any of this stuff. I have a lot of ideas about it.
Yeah.
And I love it. So I'll give you zero definitive answers on it, but we can talk about it all day long because I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, a huge part of my like lecturing and talks and writing, like I used to do, one of my lectures was all conspiracy theories. And in the 90s and early 2000s, very early 2000s, those lectures were so much fun. And then something happened, like, well, 9/11 happened, but the rise of Alex Jones and all of that, I was like, oh, I I can't do these lectures anymore at all because people are coming here specifically to hear me say terrible things about these people or those people.
Yeah. And that's and that, again, like I still am like a big kind of conspiracy head, right? Like I am interested in all kinds of different conspiracies, parapolitics, whatever you want to call it. And I absolutely detest people like Alex Jones, who have almost created this atmosphere where you can't talk about it, right? Because it's so conflated with horrible beliefs, like, you know, like right-wing fascist beliefs. And those kind of things have become almost like deliberately conflated, right? Like,
yeah. And like when I used to call into Alex's radio show in Texas in the early 90s.
I used to listen to him when I first got into like conspiracy stuff. I used to listen to Alex Jones. I was like an Alex Jones fan. Kind of snapped myself out of it, thank God.
And I called in and talked to him the night of Y2K because he had gone on the radio and started saying that, like, I think he said the North Koreans had invaded Texas and they were starting to blow up atomic power plants. And he was saying this on the radio as if it was really happening.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was like, oh, he's completely gone over the edge at this point. And then within like 3 or 4 years, like he's being interviewed on CNN and MSNBC. And I was like, what just fucking happened?
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy.
I
feel like,
go ahead. You were talking about how the most cults have like the underlying racism shit. Another thing that I was noticing recently with watching the Twin Flames docs is how they're like terrible about LGBTQ stuff and like non-binary stuff. They're so up their ass about like traditional man and woman stuff that they don't even recognize anything else and talk shit and try to like flip people.
Oh yeah. That happened in Love Has Won as well, and it's not included. But and I don't want to say too much about it. But there was one follower, who was a trans follower, and they were in a process of transitioning. But Love Has Won were like, no, you cannot do that whatsoever, and kind of sent this person down a path of like, you know, denying, you know, elements of who they are. And there's a lot of that, and there was a lot of homophobia as well. But like, with Amy, it's you're never really sure whether or not she's like almost like drunk, you know, like belligerent, you know, like when somebody's drunk, belligerent. It's almost kind of like, it almost comes out in like I'm not saying it's funny, but almost you don't know whether they're being serious or not. Like you don't know whether or not they're actually saying something that they believe in, or whether it's just belligerent drunkenness. But she would just like let rip on people, and she created this culture like within the cult, because Amy was so outspoken because of the alcohol, just yelling and doing whatever all the time, that all of the followers were like that as well. So she's got her henchmen around her, which is like, you know, the main kind of hench people in the documentary would be Hope and Aurora, which is the two relatively young women. And they would kind of, you know, in a lot of ways, like emulate Amy's behavior. You know, if Amy's like drunk and screaming at people, they would be kind of drunk, not drunk themselves because they weren't drinking, but they would be like screaming at people. And
they couldn't even eat.
No, and I tell you, that is one of the things that I noticed, because I went through and I watched all of their live streams chronologically, so I can show you the moment that like Lauren is known as Aurora, right? Archaea Aurora. And there's a moment where she joins, and you see what she looks like. She looks like a normal, regular sized woman. And you see her like, you know, 6 months later, and the amount of weight loss is really quite staggering when you see it. And there was an article that came out just recently, like a couple of days ago, I think. And it was somebody that had I think gone to college with one of the followers. He calls his cult name is Commander Buddha. His real name is Gabriel Gomez. And she wrote an article in the Daily Beast, I think, because she like reconnected with him after watching the documentary, and just was talking about how he was just like a kind of like a shell of the person that she knew beforehand. So it's like, yeah, a lot of these people have become like very disconnected. But again, like, there's a lot of things that drove them to that point, right? So some of it's explored in the documentary, but you've got a lot of people that are dealing with like financial difficulties, a lot of health difficulties, not enough access to healthcare, so much trauma that a lot of these people have been through. Like Erin, for example, who burnt down the house with the sage. I mean, and she talks about this on some of the live streams. So it's, you know, it's not stuff it's stuff that's already out there, but we're talking about, you know, some of the most horrifying things that you can imagine in a childhood. So then you take that trauma is going to, if you don't deal with it, it's going to manifest itself in some way. And a lot of these people find themselves drawn to people like Amy, who say that they can heal everything and make everything great. And you can ascend to 5D with me, and we can create the new earth together, and all of this kind of stuff. And to some people that sounds really appealing, and they can kind of bypass. I think when you're that desperate, you overlook a lot of red flags, but you also can kind of overlook a lot of the like the belief systems that they have, like we were talking about now, like the racism and a lot of the homophobia. If that doesn't align with the people that join immediately, because they're kind of creating this environment where they're all kind of, I hate to use the term brainwashing, but they're all kind of convincing themselves. It can be really easy to just kind of like overlook a lot of that stuff. And I'm not trying to make excuses for them, because you know, they're responsible for themselves. But a lot of people kind of use that mentality of like, yo, if you join a cult, you're stupid or you're gullible or you're whatever. And it's, you know, there's a lot of things that will drive someone to join a group like that.
Yeah, and it's within it's within all of us, right? Like there's like collecting points on your Starbucks card, like collecting, like people want to belong to something. And so like deluding yourself that you found the one thing. When you were talking about, I wanted to ask you, I know that you're not a mind reader, but like how much, and if you know, how much and like when did Amy start to believe like her own bullshit?
I think she believed it from quite early on, and I think that there's different readings of this, but from my reading of her, I know that the documentary kind of says, you know, she has these moments of clarity. And again, I'm not a doctor and I don't want to diagnose her, but looking at some of the events that happened in her life, a lot of it seemed to happen post childbirth. So I don't know what was going on there. You know, obviously she's got a lot of like economic issues and whatever that kind of drove her out as well. I think again, it's difficult to talk about because there's so much context that is kind of missing. So like alcohol, for instance, she was a massive drinker before she even got into new age spirituality. She was a really big drinker. Her ex-partner posts a lot on Reddit, and he posted he's a bit of a spiritual woo-woo guy himself, not into the new age stuff, more on the Christian side. He's a little bit you know, he's quite intense, I'll just say that. But he's posted a lot of pictures of her when she was younger. Very, very big drinker. He says that she was a narcissist, and you know, there's a lot of that kind of stuff people say about her. When again, I didn't know her, so I can't say, but pattern of behavior I think probably line up. I do think that she always believed it to an extent, even at the very end. I know that she wasn't completely like cognizant, and I definitely think there were moments where like she would say like, I'm not God, this is all crap, I made this all up. She definitely did say that, but I think that she, for the most part, did completely believe it. Completely did believe that she's God. 100%.
It's so interesting to me. I was just watching, because when you were talking about like Robin Williams is part of it, Patrick Swayze is part of it.
Yeah.
I was watching an interview with George King, who was the founder of the Althurius UFO Church.
I went there in April. Actually, I went to one of their Operation Prayer Powers.
Oh yeah. We have a church. It's less than a mile from where I am right now. Nice. But I was watching an interview with him, and just so nonchalantly for George to say like, I was in contact with Jesus on Tuesday and was interrupted by Hercules. And just delivering that line so straight and with so much belief.
Yeah.
Like as like I don't know, like I know that he believes it 100%, but like, how am I, upon hearing that, supposed to like take that? And I mean, I being introspective people, like we can say like, I know that people get messages from past loved ones and they say they get messages from family and friends who have moved on. So, I mean, there's a slippery slope there from like grandma leaving you a feather, which is absolutely like a valid expression of the universe sending you a message, to I was talking to Jesus and got interrupted by Hercules.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's well, Amy's ex-boyfriend said that when he was with her, she'd signed up to Oprah's book club, right? She started reading the first book that got her into this stuff was most likely the Celestine Prophecy, which I still haven't read. I've got it, and I've got the sequel to it, but I still haven't read it.
I have
And
them too.
she was a really big fan of What Dreams May Come, right, which is the Robin Williams movie. And I was reading again, like I haven't read the book that it's based on, but apparently the book that it's based on has a lot of like theosophical influences in, a lot of kind of new age stuff in there. So she's kind of, you know, that's where she kind of started, I think. Like it kind of was the Oprah to a new age cult pipeline that they got.
Well, you know, it's interesting. So What Dreams May Come was a big movie for a lot of people. It's a Richard Matheson book. The author, so I'm a huge Richard Matheson fan. So like Richard Matheson also wrote like I Am Legend, like that Will Smith vampire movie.
Okay.
And was like the third most used writer for the Twilight Zone.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Matheson has this huge history of like weird, speculative, twisty fiction.
Yeah.
And it's so strange. Again, you see like the combinations of stuff. So my mom was a member of Oprah's book club too, which I've only ever been to one church in my life. I was raised with no religion whatsoever. And I went to this church, which was the church's name was literally called the Church of Today. So like almost never talked about Jesus. It was all just about being present and in the moment. And the minister was great. And I considered him a mentor and had lunches with him. And he was very smart. When he died, the church was taken over by Marianne Williamson.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right.
And within like a year, like the whole messaging of the church had changed. And like it became like Marianne's church.
Yeah. I can see that being a thing. I haven't looked into her that deeply, but she's quite an interesting character to me.
She is, and not for nothing, but within a few years, that church no longer existed. Like she ran it out of business.
Oh, well, that's also not surprising to me as well. She's kind of put forward as this kind of like a kind of nice hippie lady.
Yeah,
when you start digging into it, all gets a little bit sus.
Yeah. Emily, I have to bring in another guest.
We have a surprise guest here. Cute.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hi, Bryce.
Hi.
How's it going?
Cute. We're
Bryce,
talking about
Emily, Bryce.
We're talking
Hi,
about
nice to meet you.
It's great to live stream meet you.
Hi.
Bryce, do you watch cult documentaries?
Oh my God, yeah, I love them.
Did you watch Love Has Won, The Cult of Mother Gods on HBO?
No, I haven't watched that yet.
Oh my gosh. Well, our friend Emily here was a producer on it, and she has told us all the things. It's so good. It's one of the best docs of the year. It literally in the first.
Oh, Bryce, we lost your sound.
It's insane.
I lost Bryce's sound.
We had you.
Like
wait, he's muted on the screen on your little. Here, wait. There we go.
I did it. Wait.
We both.
Don't you unmute it if I unmute it?
You do it.
Can't unmute your guest. Their mic isn't connected.
Lies. He already talked.
I know. I heard him. Still can't hear you, Bryce.
It's okay. We'll figure it out.
Anyway, Emily, just quickly while Bryce figures that out.
Okay, there we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
Oh my God.
So Bryce is our resident Bigfoot expert.
I can't hear anything. I'm having trouble. Hold on. I might move over to a different setup. Hold on.
Feel
Here.
free to dip out and dip back if you have to.
Yeah, dip out and dip in. Do what you got to do.
It's not a really serious operation we're running here. Whatever you got to do.
I think you're doing a great job.
Let's see.
We've got you.
We can hear you.
Hold on.
Who's Helen?
But yeah, so anyway, my end note on Marianne is, I mean, I don't know, my dealings with her in the church were 20 years ago. Like that happened 20 years ago. So I don't know where she is on her journey now, but there's a lot of savior stuff that still seems to be happening with her.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm not very familiar with her. I've just seen like some things that people have posted on Twitter about her that are like kind of a bit.
Well, like there was a huge scandal which nobody talks about now, which was, I think her first book was like A Return to Love, which is like a reflection on A Course in Miracles, right? Yeah. So it's like, again, you have this like spiritualist, probably based in Theosophy and Madame Blavatsky, like coming into the 70s, which is where Marianne finds it and then becomes famous kind of with those ideas. And again, if you trace those ideas back, they become heavily problematic very quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's an understatement when we're talking about Blavatsky.
Right.
Blavatsky seems to come up in like almost every video that I do. Like I did one about like secret space program and alternative 3, and she even popped up in that. Like,
oh my goodness, I love that you brought up alternative 3.
Oh yeah, that took over my life for a very long time. I made like a nearly 3-hour documentary on it.
I'm gonna have to watch that. When I heard about alternative 3, I was probably 16. It was probably 1986 or 1985, and for me at that time, 100% real. Like,
oh really?
There was I watched the faux documentary that they made. Like I read any of the like papers that were being written at that time. British brain drain was a real thing. Astronauts were really talking about like stuff on the moon.
Oh yeah.
100%.
This was like I started working on that in like maybe October of last year, thinking it would just be like a really quick video. Turned into 2.5 hours. I ended up interviewing the writer of the Alternative 3 book. Got him in this documentary. I ended up interviewing Randy Kramer from the Secret Space Program.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I can't believe how like well connected all these things are. Like so much of the Secret Space Program stuff, you know, with like Corey Good and David Wilcock, all those guys. You can trace so much of it back to Alternative 3, and then like Montauk Project and stuff like that. And Montauk was
100%. I remember this was probably now 20 years ago. 25 years ago, but I was at a convention doing a lecture, and there was one table that was just smashed with people, and it was Jim Keith. And, and it was just nonstop alternative 3 the whole time.
Because he wrote that book on it, which is like a very it's a book. It's definitely a book.
It's got pages and words.
Oh yeah, I don't know about the validity of the words, but it's definitely a book. And then Bill Cooper as well.
Oh yeah, I saw Cooper 2 times in Detroit.
Oh really?
Wow.
You talk about like a crowd that was fired up to like
hear anything.
That was the Cooper lectures were the first time I was ever scared going to like an alternative lecture community.
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine the kind of crowd that Cooper got in for sure.
Bryce, what are you doing?
Well, I'm apologizing to your incredible audience for the technical difficulties. I've only been podcasting for 5 years. You'd think I would have audio and video down, but not the case. Always new challenges arise. But I'm so happy to be here. And Emily, as I was saying before, it's lovely to meet you. I'm looking forward to watching your documentary. I was just sort of eavesdropping on the last sound bites of your conversation. I already have so many questions and I'm intrigued. So
it's crazy. I want to shout out Emily's socials again to your YouTube. Well, you can say everything. Say your YouTube and your Twitter and anything that you want to say.
It's all just Weird Reads with Emily Louise. That's the YouTube channel. That's the Twitter. That's the Instagram.
Yes. Perfect.
That's
So
it.
this is a question that Emily might know or Bryce might know, because we've been talking about cults. Has there been like a united, or like, why hasn't there been a Bigfoot cult yet?
You know, I think sort of the closest thing that's probably come to it is, you know, and I don't even know if I want to like name names, but there was a guy in Oregon who apparently had come across Bigfoot in a cave.
Sure.
And he had some video recordings and everything, and apparently this was a Bigfoot sighting that could recur because he knew where the cave was. So he would go back there to revisit the creature and try and bring along family or friends and whatnot to a modicum of success, if you know what I mean. But anyway, from what I understand is, you know, sort of months later after this sort of event had happened in his life, he was sort of connecting it to spirituality and started having sort of like groupings together to communicate with the Bigfoot species and get messaging, and it became very much cult like. So yeah, I think it does happen, not very often, not entirely as much as the UFO cult, but yeah, it has happened before, and it certainly is interesting.
I saw a guy lecture probably in the late 80s, early 90s, and it seemed like he was trying to start a Bigfoot cult because he had all of the necessary tropes, right? So he had Bigfoot in the Pacific Northwest, living underneath Mount Shasta, like surrounded by Lemurian crystals, and like the Ascended Masters knew that Bigfoot was there, and they were using Bigfoot to like, and so when I was watching him lecture, I was like, oh, like, but then it just went nowhere.
Yeah. There were some of those motifs in this guy's presentation as well. And you know, the interesting thing is too, I lost my train of thought, but it doesn't matter. I was going to say, I know what I was going to say. This guy was an academic too. You know, he had even written some, you know, papers and published some stuff. So he was a very, you know, well thought of member of the community, and sort of to have this go topsy-turvy. This is a Bigfoot encounter going topsy-turvy if I ever heard of one. Usually you just see the things and scramble out of there and hesitate to tell your family and friends. But apparently this guy was, you know, summoned back to bring some of the messaging home.
Nice.
You're not, I don't mean this in any way, shape, or form, but, and you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to. No one here is a Mormon, are they?
No.
Because, you know, Bigfoot is really big in the Mormon religion.
I've heard of that. Yeah. Can you enlighten us, touch upon that a little bit?
So without any names being said, some of the like most well-known Bigfoot researchers are Church of Latter-day Saints Mormons.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And one of the things that they use is in the Bible.
Okay.
Yeah. In the Bible.
Cain and Abel.
No.
Oh.
Esau and his brother.
Oh.
Because in the Bible, it says that Esau came forth red with a hairy garment over him, and they named him Esau.
Oh,
and
my
then
God.
Esau's father was blind and knew his sons apart because Esau, when he touched him, felt like he was covered in fur.
Oh, that's really good. Oh my gosh. Oh, I've got to look into that, because I've heard the other one that goes back to which predates Esau, which was that Cain was marked with a marking that some have interpreted as the mark of a beast or of a wanderer or as a forest. You know, he was banished. So, you know, and some have interpreted that as the markings of Bigfoot, but nothing in there about hairy. This is way more on point.
Oh, Esau is way more on point. And even though they have changed in the past 10 years, Church of Latter-day Saints, Cain was marked by having, in the Mormon church, he was marked by having black skin.
Oh,
so
right.
That was the Mormon belief of the rejected person were people who were still marked with black skin of Cain.
And I
So
can
you-
see how that's just a slippery slope into troubled areas, especially, I mean,
yeah.
I can't believe I almost stepped in it. Well, actually, yes, I can. That's actually apt for me. But yeah, that's wild. I don't make anything of it. I think the Bigfoot encounters and stories are, I do think they go back as long as possibly human civilization. Actually, I don't know if that's true, because I think when we're encountering Bigfoot, we are sort of looking back on what, on where we come from, and this sort of, if you look at the archetypes of it, strong, living off the wilderness, and simpatico with nature, able to commune with the trees and the animals, and I think this is something that man has akin to and connects with, and so. This to me is what Bigfoot represents in essence. And so I'm not surprised, I don't make too much of the Bible stuff. I do like that Asa. That is interesting, this hairy aspect of it. But yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. And someone pointed out in the chat.
Can Bryce tell everybody where the heck he's from so people know what is going on?
Oh yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm Bryce Johnson. I started in film and television, but I've somehow made my segue into this incredible field known as the paranormal. But I host a podcast show called Bigfoot Collectors Club with my great friends Michael and Riley, which you guys have been a part of, and I also produce and star in a show on the Discovery Channel called Expedition Bigfoot, where we've put together a team of grounded researchers and scientists to look for proof of this creature that we call Bigfoot.
That was perfect.
Nice.
Dang.
I know, nice. And you're still in movies.
And yes, and I was recently in Oppenheimer. I got to play, which is interesting. What? Yeah, I booked this small role, and it was an Army Air Force officer.
And you made it yours.
And I made it mine, of the 509. And I loved this because those who know Roswell history, well, it was the 509th bomb group, which is the only atomic bomb group in the nation. Well, they were tasked with handling Fat Boy and Slim, which were the name of the atomic devices. So they became the 509th atomic bomb group. And a few years later, when some saucer apparently crashed in Corona, New Mexico, and Roswell, a couple crashes perhaps even, it was the 509th bomb group that was tasked with picking up the pieces and bringing it back to their base. So it was a great little Easter egg. And I wanted to sort of bring it up to Christopher Nolan as he was done directing the scene and on to the next thing. But the only thing that ended up coming out of my mouth was thank you for the opportunity. And that was it. And he was on to and then the next thing you know, he was in a helicopter flying over the town, with his cameraman. And I was like, wow, just amazing. But what an incredible experience. And, I did want to sort of relay that there is sort of a deep UFO history entrenched in the atomic launchings. So, maybe another movie.
I was getting, when I used to have hair back in the day, I used to get my hair cut at this place in my hometown, and it was called George's Hairport. And
that's a great name.
That is a good name.
So crazy. And so I would go in there and he would, again, I had hair, and I would have him shave my head down into like a flat top or a mohawk, whatever I had at the time. So I was in there probably in 92. I'd been going there for 10 years, and I'm sitting in the chair, and I finally start to look around at George's barbershop. And across the wall from me is a picture of him in the 509.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, oh shit. And I'm like, George, were you involved in the recovery of Roswell? And he goes, even if I was, I wouldn't be allowed to talk about it. And then finished my haircut. Wow. And that was it.
That's incredible. That's incredible. It's those witnesses that really make that whole Roswell story just.
I love when people say that they can't say stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, oh my gosh. What an incredible thing. That's wild, man. Yeah, I love that.
Oh my goodness. Jessica, we're loading up with guests now.
There's more. Wait, there's more ready?
Yes.
I'm going to dip out, guys, because it's I just passed midnight here, but it was so nice to talk to you.
Emily, thank you so much for coming on.
Awesome. You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
I love your accent, and you're so cute.
Oh, I was going to mention one of the first episodes of your podcast that I listened to was the one where you watched a British TV show and you commented on how terrible British people's teeth are. And I just want to say it's true.
Everybody has been so kind about me on that episode. They're like, no, you were just being honest. I'm like, I'm sorry.
It is
No,
true.
but-
British people have famously bad teeth.
You have bad teeth, but you have all your teeth.
That's true.
Like
That's
I
true.
have bad teeth and no teeth.
It's yeah, no, you were right. You were right as well. And also the bit about like people picking up on the accents and discriminating on the accents as well. Very true.
Yes.
Very, very true. You nailed it. You
Thanks.
nailed England.
Dude.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. And I hope the rest of your stream goes really well. And Merry
Thanks, Emily.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Great to meet you, Emily.
Bye. Nice to meet you. Bye.